I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, trying to put it into words because I guess I need to vent, maybe get some clarity. My wife Emily and I have been married for almost 10 years. We met in college, got married pretty young, and for the most part I thought we had a good life. She's always been a bit bitchy, quick with a snarky remark, but I brushed it off as her personality. We had our fights, sure, but nothing out of the ordinary. I worked hard, she worked a decent job, and we had a comfortable routine. Or so I thought. Lately, I'd started noticing little things. Her phone kept ringing at odd hours, and she was more secretive about it. She'd hide her phone when I entered the room, delete texts, and sometimes she'd get defensive when I asked about her day. Honestly, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe she was just busy, stressed, or hiding some minor flirtation. But then, I caught her lying about where she'd been last week. She said she was at work, but I found her car parked at that new gym she said she didn't like, and she was wearing the same workout clothes she'd worn earlier that day. That was the first real sign something was off. I didn't want to believe it, but I started digging a little. I installed a tracker on her phone, which I hate myself for doing, but I felt I needed some proof. The more I looked, the more I found evidence that she was hiding something. Texts, messages, pictures, nothing explicit at first, just flirty stuff that didn't exactly seem innocent. She'd send a good morning to someone named Andy every day, and she'd delete the conversation history right after. She also started taking her phone everywhere, into the bathroom, even into the bedroom when I was asleep. Then came the day I accidentally saw a message pop up on her screen while she was in the shower. It was a sext, not just a kissy face or a dirty joke, but full-blown sexting. She was texting this guy, "Can't wait to see you tonight," and "I want you so badly," all signed off with a heart emoji. I stared at it, my stomach twisting. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Emily. My wife was sexting with some guy, and from the tone of those messages, it's obvious they'd been doing this for months. I didn't even know her that well anymore. The worst part, I knew who this guy was. It's a local sports celebrity, Jake Turner. Everyone in town knows him, and honestly, he was my childhood hero. I idolized him growing up. We even met him once at a charity event I took Emily to, and she was all over him, joking and flirting. I remember thinking she was just being friendly, at least that's what I told myself. Turns out it was more than that. She's been sexting with him behind my back, probably fantasizing about him while I was planning our anniversary surprise. I can't even describe how betrayed I feel. I was furious, but I kept my composure. I wanted to confront her, but I didn't want to do it in anger. Still, I couldn't keep this secret. I needed to know just how deep it went. The thing is, I also didn't want to believe she could be this type of person. She's always been bitchy, yes, but I thought that was just who she was. Now, I see it's more than that. She's manipulative, a liar, and she's been messing around with a guy I once admired who I helped introduce her to. I think I've been a fool for a long time, thinking everything was fine. The plan started forming in my head. I didn't want to just catch her and walk away. I wanted to see what she'd say, how she'd react when she realized I knew. I needed her to admit it, to face the consequences of her betrayal. I started collecting more evidence, taking screenshots, copying messages, even setting up a little camera in the living room. I wanted to catch her red-handed, but also to have proof. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, especially with her bitchy attitude and her tendency to lie her way out of everything. I already knew she'd deny it, make excuses, accuse me of spying or overreacting. Honestly, I don't even know what I want anymore. Part of me still loves her, or at least I thought I did. But the other part, the angry part, is screaming for justice, for some kind of revenge. I want her to feel what I felt when I read those texts, to see if she truly understands the damage she's caused. I've never felt so betrayed in my life. I thought about just packing my bags and leaving, but I also wanted to make her suffer just a little, make her realize what she threw away. I spent the night tossing and turning, trying to decide what to do next. Should I confront her immediately, or wait until I have more proof? Should I bring her to her knees or just walk away quietly? Everything's a mess inside my head. I never expected to be in this situation, and honestly, I don't even know how I got here. I just know I can't keep pretending everything's okay anymore. I kept my findings hidden for a couple of days, but that didn't make the pain or anger any easier to deal with. Every time I looked at her, I saw the lies in her eyes, that bitchy smirk she always has when she's trying to wiggle out of something. She was acting normal, normal enough to make me question myself. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was just paranoid. But deep down, I knew she was hiding something, and it was eating me up. One night she came home late from her book club. I knew she was lying. I had seen the messages, the sexts, the pictures. I'd even watched her hide her phone like it was her lifeline. That night, I decided enough was enough. I waited until she was in the shower and I grabbed her phone from the nightstand. My hands trembled a little, but I knew I had to see everything. I unlocked it using her fingerprint. She always leaves her phone unlocked because she's so confident I wouldn't do anything. What I found confirmed all my suspicions. Her messages with Jake had been active every day, especially in the evenings. They had plans, secret meetups, and I could see from the timestamps that they'd been sexting pretty much nonstop for months. There were also pictures, some of her, some of him, both explicit, both clearly sent with intent. I stared at her face in the photos, her usual bitchy, dismissive expression replaced with something more desperate, more reckless. It was like seeing her cheat on me in her own skin. I was furious, but I also felt hollow. I'd spent so many years trying to build a life with her, and now I was faced with this betrayal. I remembered all the times she'd snapped at me, accused me of snooping, called me paranoid, and here I was, discovering the truth with her own device. I felt like I'd been slapped in the face with a brick. The wife I thought I knew was nothing but a lying, cheating bitch. I decided I had enough evidence. I set my plan into motion. I wanted to confront her, but I wanted to do it smart. I didn't want her to get defensive or lie her way out again. I also didn't want her to spin some story like she was innocent or misunderstood. I was ready for her to face the consequences of her actions. So I waited until she was sitting in the living room, pretending to be relaxed, like she hadn't just been caught red-handed. I sat down across from her, took a deep breath, and pulled out her phone, showing her the messages on the screen. Her reaction was immediate. She froze, her bitchy mask cracking just for a moment, then she scoffed, rolled her eyes, and started lying. "What are you talking about? That's none of your business. You're crazy. I don't even know what you're accusing me of." Her voice was sharp, defensive, full of that same bitchy tone she always uses when she's cornered. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You've been sexting with Jake Turner, haven't you, for months? The charity event, the gyms, the secret messages. I found everything, Emily. How long has this been going on?" She blinked, then sneered. "Oh, please. You're just jealous because I look better than his little fans. You're imagining things. Jake's just a friend. You're overreacting as usual." She was lying, I knew that. She always lied when she felt cornered, but I wasn't just angry at her lying, I was hurt deeply. I wanted her to admit it, to break down and tell me the truth. Instead, she kept spinning her bullshit, trying to make me feel like I was losing my mind. That moment was like a punch to the gut. All that love, all those years, evaporated in her lies. I felt a mix of rage, sadness, and disappointment. How could she throw everything away for some stupid sexting? And with Jake Turner, of all people, the guy I always admired. It was like a punch in my chest every time I thought about it. I couldn't believe I had been so blind. I had introduced her to him, helped her meet this hero of mine, and now she was cheating on me with him. I started feeling numb. The anger boiled over, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. I was glad I found out before things got any worse. I told her to get out of my house, that I was done. She yelled, called me crazy, said I was overreacting, but I didn't care. I knew she'd never admit her faults, but I had the proof, and that was enough. I felt like I was waking up from a nightmare I'd been living in all these years. The betrayal cut so deep, I didn't even know if I could forgive her or if I even wanted to. The emotional fallout was tough. I didn't cry, but I sure wanted to. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry at myself for trusting her for so long. I kept thinking about the times she lied, about the little things she said to cover her tracks. I wondered what I did wrong or if I was just naive. I was trying to hold it together, but inside I was falling apart. I kept asking myself if I could ever look at her the same way again, if I could forgive her, or if I should just cut my losses and walk away. It was a mess inside my head, and I knew things would never go back to the way they were. After I kicked her out, I stayed up all night, trying to process what just happened. Honestly, I felt a strange mix of relief and devastation. On one hand, I was glad I finally uncovered the truth and didn't have to live in that fog of doubt anymore. On the other, I couldn't shake the feeling of being completely broken. It's like my identity as her husband was shattered in that moment. I'd spent years building what I thought was a solid life, trust, routines, a future, and now it all seemed meaningless. But the worst part was realizing how much I'd invested in her, how much I'd loved her, only to find out she'd been cheating on me with a celebrity I looked up to in my youth. I kept replaying those moments at that charity event, how she flirted with him, laughed at his stupid jokes, and I had actually thought she was just being friendly. Turns out she was fantasizing about him, sexting him late at night, lying to my face. It made me question everything I knew about her, about us. In the days that followed, I couldn't focus. I'd go to work, but my mind kept circling back to her, the lies, the sexts, the betrayal. I kept looking at her face in my mind, her words, her sneer when she tried to deny everything. I replayed the moment I confronted her, the way she spun her lies, trying to make herself the victim. It was like I was living someone else's nightmare. I felt anger, rage, but also an overwhelming sadness. I'd lost the woman I thought I knew, and honestly, I felt like I'd lost a part of myself. I knew I had to plan my next move carefully. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, not knowing what she was up to or if she'd keep lying and sneaking around. So, I decided I needed to get some distance, time to think, to cool off, to consider what I really wanted. I moved into a friend's house for a few days, tried to stay busy, but nothing helped. Every corner of my mind kept returning to her bitchy smirk and the way she lied so effortlessly. What hurt the most was that I still loved her, or at least I thought I did. Despite everything, part of me wanted to believe there was a way back, some way to fix this mess. But deep down, I knew that trust was gone, irreparably broken. That's what hit me hardest. It wasn't just the cheating. It was the realization that everything I believed in our marriage might have been built on lies. I kept asking myself, how could I have been so blind? Did I miss all the signs? Was she just pretending for years? I also started thinking about how to handle her. I knew she'd come back, probably trying to deny everything, spin more lies, put on that bitchy act to make me feel guilty. She's always been good at that. I could already hear her saying I was overreacting, that I was crazy, that she'd never cheat on me, but I had the proof now, and that changed everything. I didn't want her to manipulate me anymore. I wanted to be firm, to stand my ground. I knew I had to decide whether I wanted to try to save the marriage or walk away for good. The thing is, I wasn't sure I was ready to let go. Despite the betrayal, I still felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could fix this. But I also knew that trust was shattered beyond repair. Still, I was torn. I kept thinking about the good times, the vacations, the birthdays, the quiet nights on the couch. All of it suddenly felt like a lie. I wondered if I could ever look at her the same way again, if I could ever forgive her for the things she'd done. Meanwhile, her texts with Jake kept flashing through my mind. The way she described their secret meetings, the way she spoke about wanting him so badly. It was like a punch to my chest every time. I thought about how she always called me paranoid or jealous whenever I asked about her whereabouts, but now I knew. She was hiding this entire side of her life from me, and I wondered how many other lies had I missed, how long had this been going on. It's like she was living a double life and I was the fool who didn't see it. I started considering what I should do next. Should I confront her again, or just let her come crawling back, begging for forgiveness? I wasn't even sure I wanted her to come back. Part of me wanted to cut ties immediately, to erase her from my life. But another part still felt the sting of love, of hope that maybe, somehow, things could be fixed. It's a confusing mess. All I know is that I feel more alone than I ever have, even with her around. And I don't know how to get out of this hole I'm in. A few days went by and I stayed in that limbo, trying to figure out what my next move should be. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I couldn't just brush this aside or pretend it didn't happen. The betrayal was too deep, the lies too many. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her sexting Jake Turner, that smug look she always had when she knew she was getting away with something. It made me sick, knowing I had been played for a fool all these years. I also couldn't ignore how she'd lied about everything. She'd always been a bitch about sharing information, hiding her phone, sneering when I asked questions. Now I saw it for what it was, a manipulation, a way to keep her secret safe. I thought about the times she'd snapped at me, called me paranoid when I asked if she'd been with a guy. She accused me of overreacting, but I knew better now. It was her way of covering her tracks, and I'd fallen for it, hook, line, and sinker. The hardest part was that I still loved her, or at least I thought I did. That's what made this so complicated. I wanted to believe that there was some way to save what we had, even after all this. But how could I trust her again? I kept asking myself that question over and over. Could she ever truly be faithful? Did she even want to be? Or was this just who she was, someone who lied and cheated, then spun stories to keep her image intact? I knew I had to have a serious conversation with her. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know. But I also didn't want to just tear everything apart immediately. I needed her to see the damage she'd done. So I decided to give her a chance to explain herself, or at least to hear her out. I reached out to her, told her I wanted to meet, face to face. She responded with that same bitchy attitude, acting like she didn't see what the fuss was about, trying to brush it off as if nothing serious was happening. When she arrived, she was dressed defensively, like she was ready to lie her way out of it. I was calm, but inside I was boiling. I pulled out the screenshots, the messages, the pictures, and put them on the table. Her eyes widened at first, then she rolled her eyes and scoffed. "You're overreacting. It's not what you think. That's just sexting, it doesn't mean anything. You're making a huge deal out of nothing." Her tone was dismissive, almost like she thought she was smarter than me, like she could spin her way out of this mess. I stared at her, feeling every bit of the betrayal that had been building up inside me. "You've been sexting with Jake Turner, haven't you?" I asked sharply. "For months. I saw the messages, the pictures, don't even try to deny it. How long have you been lying to me?" She looked at me with that bitchy smirk, then shrugged. "So what? That doesn't change anything, it's just sex. You're so insecure, it's pathetic." That's when I realized she was never going to admit it. She was just going to keep her lie going, spin more bullshit, and pretend it was no big deal. But I wasn't about to let her get away with it. I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak. How could she be so callous? How could she cheat on me with my childhood hero, someone I introduced her to, and then dismiss it all like it was nothing? I wanted her to see the damage she'd done, to feel some ounce of guilt, some remorse. Instead, she was just bitchy and confrontational, mocking me for being hurt. At that moment, I knew I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that this was just a misunderstanding or some silly fling. I had the proof, I had the evidence, and I had lost all respect for her. I told her to pack her things and leave. I didn't want to see her face anymore, not until she could come back with some genuine remorse. Her response was more insults, more accusations that I was crazy and jealous, but I didn't care. I was done being played. As she stormed out, I felt emptier than I'd ever felt before. The house suddenly felt huge and cold, echoing with the silence of her absence. I looked around at the life I'd worked so hard for, and I wondered if it was over. I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to trust again, or if I even wanted to. The pain of betrayal hit me hard, but I knew I had to face it. I had to decide whether to fight for what was left, or just walk away from her forever. That night I lay in bed wide awake, trying to piece together all that had happened. The anger was still there, but so was a deep sadness. I thought about all the years I'd spent loving her, trusting her, building a life with her. I also thought about how she lied, manipulated, and threw away everything for some stupid sex with her ex-hero. It's funny how quick everything can change. How one moment your whole world is fine, and the next, it's shattered beyond repair. I kept asking myself if I had been blind, if I should have seen the signs, or if she had just been pretending all along. Either way, I knew things wouldn't be the same anymore. Not ever. The days after she left were a blur of emotional chaos. I threw myself into work trying to drown out the pain, but every time I sat still, her face haunted me. The betrayal ran so deep that I started questioning everything: my judgment, my trust, my ability to ever love again. The house was cold and silent, a stark reminder of what I'd lost. I kept replaying those sexts, her dismissive attitude, the way she'd lied and lied until I found irrefutable proof. It was like a punch to the gut every time I thought about how she'd just thrown everything away for some meaningless sex with Jake Turner, the man I once idolized. One night I sat alone in the living room, staring at my phone, trying desperately to make sense of it all. I didn't want to reach out to her, didn't want to hear her lies, but I couldn't shake the urge to get some answers. I knew she'd probably try to spin her way out of this again, accuse me of overreacting, or say I was just jealous. But I had the proof. It was there, staring right back at me. I decided that if I was going to do this, I'd do it on my terms. I picked up her phone again and went through everything one last time. I found more intimate messages, more pictures, all of which confirmed that she'd been deep in this affair for months. The thing that struck me most was her tone. She was so bitchy, so dismissive of me, like I was just some inconvenience in her life. That's when I realized she'd been cheating on me long before I ever suspected. All those little signs, her secretive behavior, her excuses, were just the tip of the iceberg. The next morning I woke up with a clear decision. I was done. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay, that she would change, or that I could forgive her. I knew I deserved better than this, deserved respect, honesty, and loyalty. So I called her, telling her to meet me at the house. When she arrived, her bitchy attitude was still there, but I didn't care anymore. I was calm but firm. I laid out all the evidence on the table: screenshots, messages, pictures. I watched her face twist into a mix of anger, contempt, and frustration as I confronted her again. She tried her usual denial. "You're crazy. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. It's just sex." But I didn't buy it anymore. I told her I knew about the months of sexting, about her plans with Jake, and that I was done pretending. I said I was sick of her lies, sick of her manipulations, and that I wanted her out of my life. Her response was classic Emily: bitchy, dismissive, full of insults. She accused me of being paranoid, jealous, and insecure. She called me controlling and accused me of spying on her. I just looked at her and said, "You're a liar. You've been cheating on me with someone I looked up to, and I won't stand for it anymore." I felt a strange sense of relief as I watched her try to gaslight her way out of it, knowing I finally had the upper hand. She stormed out, yelling about how I was the crazy one, how I was overreacting, and how she didn't even want to be with someone who didn't trust her. Honestly, I didn't care anymore. I'd already made my decision. I wasn't going to beg her to stay, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me further. I knew I needed to start healing, even if that meant life without her. That night, I sat alone, feeling exhausted, yet somehow lighter. I realized that I'd been holding on to the hope that maybe she'd change, that she'd admit her faults and fix what she broke. But she never would. She's too bitchy, too manipulative, and too selfish. I learned a harsh lesson: that sometimes betrayal isn't just about the act itself, but about how it reveals the true nature of someone you once loved. I knew I'd have a long road ahead. But for the first time in days, I felt like I was finally starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I had to accept that I couldn't fix her, only myself. And maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild my life from this mess. Since she left, I've been trying to piece myself back together, though honestly, it's a slow process. The house feels emptier than ever, and there are moments when I catch myself thinking about her, about the woman I thought I knew, the woman I loved, only to remember the lies, the sexts, the betrayal. It's like waking up from a nightmare, but the scars of it stay with you. I keep telling myself that I deserve better, that I should never have trusted someone who could be so manipulative and careless with my feelings. Reflecting on everything, I realize how much I overlooked, how many times I excused her bitchy attitude or brushed aside the red flags. I see now that her lies were not just about the affair. They were about control, about keeping me in the dark so she could do what she wanted without consequence. I think about how she dismissed my feelings, called me crazy, made me feel like I was losing my mind. That's what hurts the most. the way she manipulated her way out of responsibility, as if I was the problem, not her. But I also see this as a wake-up call. I've learned a lot about trust, about honesty, and about the importance of paying attention to the little signs. I've learned that someone's true character comes out in moments like these, and it's better to face the truth than keep living in denial. I've come to accept that she's not the person I thought she was. She's someone different, someone who betrayed everything we built together. Moving forward, I know I have to focus on myself. I've started going back to the gym, reconnecting with friends I'd neglected, and trying to rediscover who I am outside of that relationship. It's not easy. There are days I feel angry, days I feel like crying, but I push through because I know this pain won't last forever. I remind myself that I'm better off without someone who manipulates and lies, no matter how bitchy or charming she tries to be. I also want to share this as a warning to others. Trust your gut. Don't ignore the signs, secretive behavior, lying, dismissiveness, because they rarely mean nothing. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Because if you don't, you might end up in a situation where your entire world comes crashing down, just like mine did. And even if it hurts like hell now, there's always a chance to rebuild, to start fresh, and to find happiness again. I've learned that real strength is in facing the truth, no matter how ugly it is. It's in walking away from betrayal, standing up for yourself, and refusing to be manipulated or lied to anymore. I might be broken right now, but I'm rebuilding, slowly, painfully, but surely. And in the end, I know I'll come out of this stronger, wiser, and more aware of what I truly deserve. That's what this has taught me. Never settle for less than honesty, loyalty, and genuine respect. Because once those are gone, everything else crumbles. And I refuse to let anyone, especially someone I once loved, destroy what's left of me with lies and betrayal. I'll heal, I'll move on, and someday I'll be better for it.